A client met his banker to discuss opening a restaurant in a busy airport. In us, he found a partner that understood the importance of reaching for the sky. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Mac.
Hey everybody, welcome to Season 4, Episode 31 of the More Than Just Code podcast. My name is Timmy Trout.
Hello?
What?
This is not More Than Just Code.
Oh.
This is More Than Just Star Trek, sir.
More Than Just Star Trek, yes. More Than Just Star Trek.
Hello and welcome. Would you like me to do it for you today?
This is a More Than Just podcast production.
Hey, welcome to Spotcast, Season 4, Episode 31. My name is Tim Mitchell. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful.
And hailing from the West Texas town of El Paso, we have Jaime Lopez Jr., who's currently residing in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And if any of us cut out today, dear listeners, it's because Tim and I are currently getting bombarded by snow as we in the Great White North tend to go.
I was trying not to think about that, actually. Thanks for that, it's funny. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they were like, this episode is brought to you by, and I was thinking, like, we should come up with some really sort of weird,
We're just going to improv some ads?
Yeah, some ads, like some real, and viewers like you, like they do on all those sort of, NPR kind of things, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
This episode brought to you by Cable Cuff Cable Ties for cabling your cables. And what else have I got on my desk? Also brought to you by Spotcast holographic stickers.
Ooh. And get yours today.
Yes, and don't forget the Behringer, Q802 mixers with the USB optional interface. And viewers like you. There you go. All right. Anyway, let's start off with some fact check. So I was talking last week about this comedian show with coffee and cars and Jerry Seinfeld, and the show was called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. It started out as a online thing on Crackle or something like that, which is like a service that kind of fizzled out, and Netflix eventually bought it. And Jerry Seinfeld, I was watching some interviews with him this weekend. He was saying that he is not going to be doing any more comedians in cars getting coffee. So
I think he's exhausted all the comedians.
Pretty much. Well, that, and yeah, I think he's like, as you know, with the Seinfeld thing, he sort of feels that you should go out on a high note as opposed to waiting till something should get canceled.
Yeah,
mind you, there's a really good episode of him being interviewed by Larry King, who asked if he got canceled, and Jerry loses it on him, but politely with a big smile on his face. But anyway, and just for Jonathan's sake, I did look at the Sony market cap and the Disney market cap, and it turns out that Sony's market cap is 135 billion, and Disney's market cap is 272 billion. So technically, they could, stomp on them and rock, paper, scissors them or whatever they do in the stock market. I don't know.
Yeah, and theoretically, they could also, because Disney does not necessarily need all the manufacturing and all the other things that Sony has, they could enter into an agreement with a third party to immediately dispose of probably more than half of that if they chose to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because I've always thought of Sony as a hardware company. I've been a Sony user fan, whatever, since way before the Walkman. And I think for a while there, all my TVs and stuff were Sony branded.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, Go Fish was the name of the movie I couldn't remember the name of, which was by Gwen Turner, and it was also a black and white movie that was sold at the same Sundance as Clerks, and according to Kevin Smith, so you have to check your facts, this was the first movie sold at Sundance. His Clerks was the first movie sold at Sundance, but also Go Fish, like at the actual, not afterwards or whatever, which is how things normally work there.
Yeah.
But yeah, your mileage may vary on that fact. So let's move into the headlines, and Jonathan's up first.
Yeah, once again, we'll kick off with some Star Trek news. So this week at the Paramount Investors Day presentation, It was announced by J.J. Abrams himself that we are boldly going back into the Kelvinverse. So Star Trek 4, which will probably have a more elegant name than Star Trek 4, starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban, John Cho, and Simon Pegg, is slated to be shooting by the end of the year, according to J.J. Abrams. So we're getting a Star Trek 4 after much waiting and speculation as to what it was going to be. There's not a lot of detail on sort of, what it's going to be, how it's going to be, incorporated. Although it says, we're going to bring back the classic characters and we're going to do some other cool things too. But they kind of rebooted the franchise with the Star Trek, and then they did Star Trek Into Darkness, which was sort of their take on the Khan story. Star Trek Beyond, directed by Justin Lin, was sort of like a really high production value episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, it was kind of like Insurrection with motorcycles.
Yeah, It wasn't bad. It was lacking.
It was better than Insurrection, that's for sure.
It certainly was, but it wasn't. It didn't really advance the universe. It didn't really move anything forward. All it did was just tell a fun popcorn movie story, which is fine. But
yeah, true. Yeah.
I think if you're going to go to an event film now, I think the expectations, especially after the MCU and the Star Wars and everything else, it feels weird to have this just sort of standalone adventure storyline. So it'll be interesting to see what 4 does, if it's just going to be another story or if they're going to try and move the needle, what they've got in mind. But what do you two think about Star Trek 4?
Well, there wasn't really that much lens flare in Star Trek 3. I was a little let down by that.
Well, Jeremy Lin versus JJ,
Oh, was it? Okay, that would explain it. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It was very much like a video game, that particular episode, I'm looking forward to it. I really like Zachary Quinto as Spock. And Chris Pine sort of does it. I love Carl Urban as McCoy, and of course Simon Pegg, right? So yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah, I'll be up for it. Sad to think about what they'll do with Chekhov's situation, given that Anton
I was going to say
a few years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that perhaps maybe that they would dedicate the movie to him and, make a reference to his character going off to different adventures. Didn't they kind of do that in the last movie, though? They did put it out in memory of him, I believe, at the end title. Oh,
right?
no, I think you're right. They, obviously he starred in that one. I think he died before it had been released. But it's obviously it's a tragedy, and obviously it's really sad that he's gone. But it's not Kirk or Spock or McCoy. It's not even Uhura or Scotty. Like, it really, due respect to Walter Koenig and George Takei, and those guys are at the bottom of the first class. You know what I mean?
Oh my!
Yes. Sorry, George.
No, it's funny though that you say that about Koenig, because he was one of the few people that was in just about everything. Like like after the fact, like he did a lot of post Star Trek stuff, right? So yeah. So and he was brought into sort of, he was the monkey, like he was brought in because he had the sort of monkey like hair and the youth angle and stuff like that, right?
Well, and I think it was important to Gene Roddenberry at the time. When he came on in second season, right? I think it was important for him to envision a future where there was not this adversarial Russia versus U.S. kind of mindset, and that, of course, Russians would be working with Americans because that's a happier, better future, which is what Roddenberry was kind of getting behind. So,
yeah. By the way, did you hear that the International Space Station is going to be dropped into Earth orbit, like strategically burned up?
No. Speaking
of Canada and Russia and the International Space Station, right? Yeah, I just heard that the other day. It's going to be I think it's less than 10 years. It's probably like 4 or 5 years from now. Yeah, well, I mean, again, I know that some of the modules for sure degrade over time, even in space, right? So true, and it's the only place to be really truly COVID free, it seems. Well, and I know that there's a few different countries that have their sights set on establishing permanent bases on the moon too. So I think we might see a shift from the need to have that there versus having those bases permanently affixed to the side of the moon. Yeah. It only takes a couple of days to get to the moon, so that makes sense. Right? There you go, and maybe we'll find a way to get there sooner. Who knows? Well, I mean, the whole idea behind the moon, obviously, is because there's water on the moon, they can make fuel out of it, right? And they can go to other places, which, of course, I'll never see in my lifetime. But there you go.
Hang in there, buddy. You might make it.
I know. Who knows? Yeah. So then on to our first sad news of the day.
Yeah, we know we gotta jump in with this one just because even though it's sad news, I think we need to do a celebration. So unfortunately, the other day we got news that famed director Ivan Reitman, who was not Canadian but was raised in Canada, he passed away at the age of 75. Of course, Reitman is an icon, most famously known for directing Ghostbusters and his collaboration with Dan Aykroyd, obviously another Canadian. Famously, also father to Jason Reitman, who's also the director of the most recent Ghostbusters movie, as well as other movies. And Catherine, of course, is on Working Moms, popular Netflix / CBC show. But yeah, I mean, he's, movies like, Animal House and Meatballs and Stripes. And, this guy directed so many influential comedies. He doesn't get enough credit for really turning Arnold Schwarzenegger's career in a different direction. Schwarzenegger during the 80s was really known for, Conan and Terminator and Predator and these action films. And Reitman saw him as somebody who could be really funny and put him in Twins and Kindergarten Cop and Junior and stuff like that. So, and he also directed one of my sort of quiet favorite political comedies, which is Dave with Kevin Kline. I love that movie. And Sigourney Weaver. I really like that movie. So, I mean, this guy had a huge career. He had, a massive influence on pop culture with the work that he produced. Obviously, a well-loved person here, particularly in the city of Toronto. I mean, again, the Reitman name is all over the Toronto Film Festival and the district in which that's made. And yeah, he's just a freaking legend. And obviously 75 is a decent life, but it feels like we were, still cut short with somebody who had that much talent and gave us so much. But yeah. An amazing director that's gone all too soon.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know his relative was on Working Moms. Is that his
Catherine?
daughter?
Yeah, Catherine's the star.
Oh,
that's his daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, I knew she looked familiar, but I wasn't sure how.
Yeah, it's funny if you see them side by side, you're like, oh, there it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, sad news. Anyway, I did watch The Superb Owl last week. I was trying to, wanted to watch the halftime show.
You watched the actual football game part?
No, well, I had it on, but I wasn't really paying attention. Who pays attention to the Superb Owl? What I do is I actually PVR it, and this is funny because it's the only thing that I ever PVR that I actually watch the commercials, because I usually PVR so I can fast forward through the commercials. Right?
Yeah, now you're fast forwarding through the football. And
fast forwarding through the football game, kind of going, when's the next commercial? Yeah, and disappointingly, we talked about this on More Than Just Code many times, in that, we do not get to see the American commercials.
No, I mean, that's what YouTube's for now, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. I think the only one that I mentioned was we saw like a teaser for Doctor Strange, and I think we might have seen. No, I don't think Jaime mentioned Moon Knight. But I don't think we even saw that one, right? So
yeah,
we did see some interesting Canadian commercials, obviously, because it apparently like there was even a TD commercial run there for their new Easy Trade app, right? That they specifically targeted for the Super Bowl, right? So sorry, Superb Owl. Anyway, but I'll let you take over.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It's always interesting to see what sort of makes the rotation. What people are willing to spend money on. Obviously, it's very, very expensive to advertise.
I just want to interject though. Canada beat the U.S. in the gold medal women's hockey game last night. Just want to put that in there. Yeah,
and some people are saying that was the finest women's team that's ever been put together. That Canadian team.
That's true. I did hear that. Yes, and they were from Canada, right?
They were, and they won.
And they beat
the gold
the
medal.
US
Canada,
team, right?
Canada won the gold medal, and they. I can't remember who they beat in the final.
And it's funny because I was listening to Haley Wickenheiser's book the other day, and she was saying, you don't win silver. Just want to point that out.
Ouch. I laughed. I can't recall which player it was. One of the Canadian players before the game was even played.
Are we talking about hockey again?
We are, but it just
Okay.
this it was the most un-Canadian thing I've ever heard, and yet I loved every minute of it. She said, our purpose in going out there and playing the United States is to prove that they don't belong on the ice with us." I was like, "That's awesome!"
No, really?
She said it before the game, and then they walked out and backed it up. I was like, that's bold. That's bold.
Did she say sorry at the end
Nope.
or what?
No, I don't think that team apologizes for anything, but yeah, anyways.
Wow. Yeah.
But we digress. Anyways, Super Bowl ads. It's interesting to see what people spend the money on, right? Of course, they cost a lot of money to advertise. You wonder what they're going to promote, what they really want to put there on Front Street, what they want you to walk away with. So I don't think we really got anything, and maybe Jaime, you have a different opinion. You can definitely let us know, but I don't think we got anything we weren't expecting. We got a Moon Knight teaser, but it wasn't really even as good as the first trailer that they had put out, or the second trailer I guess they put out. We got a Doctor Strange trailer that was a little more substantial, and that one had some moments, and we'll talk about these in more detail in a second. We got the Amazon Lord of the Rings series, again, a real look at it this time with actual moving people and not just hands that are holding things. And then we got, I'm going to steal your thunder here, Jaime, but we also got the Nope trailer for Jordan Peele's Nope. So...
But there was also Jurassic Park. I wasn't expecting that one. And my question is, did Samuel L. Jackson not make it through the first movie?
He did not. He did not.
Oh, that's why. That's why they didn't resurrect him for this one.
No. If he made it, he's short one limb, because at one point they find his arm. So. Yeah, and
there was a Ryan Reynolds movie in the link you have here with all the
we've got a recap. We'll have it in the show notes. There's a recap from EW.com that basically has here's the best of the ads we saw, right?
Oh, that was not okay. That was the best of them. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then the other ones, we've got some links to like the specific individual ones that are sort of in our area. Jaime, did you feel like this was a good, was there anything that surprised or pleased or was different that sort of caught your eye?
No, I think these were more or less trailers that sort of made sense to show off for the Super Bowl. The one I didn't know anything about, or I guess two of them I didn't know anything about going in, were the Atom Project, which maybe we had talked about, and I didn't, it doesn't have a natural name that says sci-fi with Ryan Reynolds, so maybe we had heard about it. And then Ambulance with Gyllenhaal was one that was weird.
Oh, but if you went and saw a movie in the theater, you would have seen the Ambulance trailer.
Yeah, we saw that before.
Really?
What was it we saw in the fall? We saw something that had.
It was a movie. We were in the theater and we saw it in the movie theater.
Yeah, maybe
Spider Guy, something like that. Spider.
Oh, was it Spider-Man? Yeah, it was Spider-Man.
Spider person.
It looked really good on that on the
no,
trailer.
No, it didn't. It looked like somebody said, "Hey, let's get an ambulance and film a movie in an ambulance." Is what it looked like to me.
Yeah.
Did you not find that? It was like
it does have the sort of pandemic feel to it.
It's like, okay, we did the phone booth already. Let's do an ambulance now, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I thought, I like Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor, and I thought it just looked. I don't think I'd go to the theater to see it, but it looked like an interesting little thriller. I would probably watch that if it was on a streaming service.
Yeah, but it's like, they rob a bank, they get caught. I gotta get you home.
Yeah,
I promise I'll get you home.
I know, it's trite.
They take over the ambulance. It's plot 27, right?
It is, but I like Yahya Abdul-Mateen too. I think he's a good actor, and I think that it could still be better than average, anyways. But we digress. Okay, so let's just sort of quickly chip through these and sort of see. So Moon Knight, I don't think we really saw anything new in that trailer that was like, oh my god, what a moment. I think it we got a little bit more of him in the costume, but it was only a 30-second teaser. There really wasn't a lot of there.
It does look at it like it's trying to be trippy, though.
Oh, again, we talked about it before. Mark or Moon Knight is a very troubled person. He has multiple personality disorder, and so it's going to be dealing with his mental health issues quite candidly, obviously. So I think they're putting that on Front Street. Like, get ready for a bit of a head trip. The one that really caught my eye was the Doctor Strange, because they gave us a lot more stuff, and there was a few WTF moments in there of like, Is that what I think it is? Especially as a comic fan, as somebody who's pretty connected to this larger world. There was a few like, I know what that is, kind of moments. And then, of course, in the week or half a week since those ads came up, people have been dissecting it frame by frame and breaking it down and zooming in and blowing up. And so there's all kinds of little Easter eggs and hints and stuff in this trailer.
Yeah, but it crosses over from What If and Wanda and the Spider-Man movie, right?
It 100% builds on those
Spoilers
things. And Loki, to be fair, and Loki.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Loki, yeah, that whole, yeah.
So this is the first time that the driving force for a movie has been Disney Plus. Like, you could go in without watching WandaVision and Loki and What If, but you probably shouldn't, or you're going to be missing out.
Yeah, true. And the Spider-Man movie, though, didn't I catch that?
Very much so.
Wasn't the whole sort of like this was caused by what you did in that movie almost,
yes,
right?
I think that's the vibe. But so I guess first I'd like to get your impressions, both of you. Jaime, what did you make of this more robust look at Doctor Strange?
It looked interesting to me, and I swear I had seen it before, so I think I saw the leaked version on Twitter or something.
Oh, okay.
It seemed eerily familiar with. They showed I think they showed the Moon Knight
Well, if you saw the Spider-Man trailer, you saw part of this movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, initially, I think they were supposed to be flipped. I think Doctor Strange was initially supposed to come first. So I think they actually went back and did some reshoots with Spider-Man to try and flip them so that they made more sense. So I think there was a different order, and I think the COVID kind of tweak things a little bit as far as when they wanted to release them, time of year and everything else, because it makes more sense to have certain movies at certain times of year. They do better at the box office, yada yada. I got the impression that these movies are pretty intertwined. I think obviously Spider-Man will be sort of required watching before you go see Doctor Strange.
It seemed interesting, so looking forward to that one.
No, I think I kind of already mentioned that, obviously Wanda is in it quite a bit.
Several Wandas at that.
Is that what it was? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, there's a scene in the trailer where you see Wanda facing Wanda.
Yeah, and there's also a couple of Doctor Stranges, because there's the Dark Doctor Strange from What If,
yes.
right?
And more than that.
Yeah, and the comment that she makes to him in the trailer, so no spoilers, that, when you do it, you're a hero. When I do it, I'm a villain, right? Sort of thing.
Yep.
Mind you, she's the Scarlet Witch, right? But the whole, because I think we kind of knew, I think probably from what you've been telling us for the last couple of months, that his actions in the Spider-Man movie are going to create problems that he's going to have to deal with, right?
Yeah, and from the stuff we saw in What If, and from the stuff we saw in Loki, and the stuff we saw in WandaVision, right? So
what I was kind of wondering was like, because it sounds like his buddy, I forgot the name of the character.
Wong.
Yeah. He sort of has a warning for him in this movie too. He warns him obviously in the Spider-Man movie not to do what he's going to do, and he does it anyway. Mm-hmm. Because he's American, but did I say that out loud? Oh, sorry. But the the whole, like, he kind of does. I kind of wonder if you can see this movie without knowing everything about the MCU, or even knowing those three pieces you talked about, the What If, the WandaVision and Loki, because he obviously gets handcuffed for his actions for playing with temporal rules, right? Mm-hmm. But then his whole deal is temporal mechanics, right?
Well, I mean, the time stone is a major component of the first Doctor Strange movie, although now the question is, does he still have the time stone given the events that happened in Infinity War and Endgame? But I think
he can just restore it from backup, though, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think it'll be really interesting to see how all this comes together. They gave us a ton, and it was such a fast cut trailer. Like, you were never on a scene for longer than 2 seconds, maybe, in that whole trailer. It's just cut, because they want you to just sort of get that there's a lot going on in there, but they really don't linger on anything. So it leaves you a lot of stuff to look at, but not a lot of ways to connect it. So you're sort of left to your own devices. Yeah. So to go into not Spoilerville necessarily, but Speculationville just for a few minutes. So if you don't want to play speculation game with us, just skip ahead a minute or two. But so if you look at that trailer, in conjunction with the teaser poster that they also put out at the same time, there are some pretty clear things that I think we're going to see. So we saw the Doctor Strange, the Doctor Strange Supreme that we saw from What If. We saw pretty clearly. He actually speaks in the trailer, so we know that it's tied into that sort of What If thing. And I think the way that they left What If made that pretty clear that was a possibility. We also on the teaser poster that they put out, we see what looks an awful lot like Captain Carter. So there's now people speculating, is Captain Carter going to turn up? Are we going to see a lot of stuff coming from that What If universe? And that opens the door to, are we going to see, who knows what possibilities? Are we going to see, alternate Captain Americas? Are we going to see, all possibilities become open when you open into a multiverse, right? The other thing that people swore that they can see in very briefly is part of Deadpool. And
really?
The big thing that was in the trailer, so you have to pay attention and listen to it, but at that point when we see Doctor Strange in manacles and he's clearly being sort of interrogated, we hear a very distinctive voice, and that very distinctive voice is Patrick Stewart.
Oh, really? What?
And there's only one character.
The Council of Ricks kind of moment that they're marching him into.
So the speculation is that this is going to do for the X-Men movies what Spider-Man No Way Home did for the Spider-Man.
Oh, you think it's Professor X?
I think it's Professor X. And there's a lot of speculation out there that it's Professor X. There's a group in the comic books that was created 10, 12 years ago called the Illuminati. And the Illuminati is made up of some of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel universe, and they sort of have this little club that is quietly behind the scenes kind of pushing chess pieces around. In the comic books, it's made up of characters including Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, Charles Xavier, Professor X from the X-Men, Namor from Atlantis from the Fantastic Four comics. Who else is in there? Oh, and Doctor Strange, of course. Doctor Strange. And so there's a lot of speculation to the point where this week on the comic book market, every early appearance of the Illuminati shot up from being like a $5 book to a $125 book.
Really? Wow.
So from the speculator market, people are 100% convinced that the Illuminati are going to show up, that Charles Xavier is going to show up, and that we're going to see some variation. It may not be exactly, obviously, the comic books, because they certainly do take liberties, and that's fine, but that we're going to see a version of the Illuminati that will include Professor Xavier making his real MCU debut, and that will be the thing that opens the door to mutants entering the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if all that speculation proves true, that's amazing. There have been a few memes floating around there where, in Jaime's Hold My Beer motif, where, all of a sudden people were like, oh, so the Marvel Cinematic Universe technically starts with Spider-Man now, because the initial Tobey Maguire Spider-Man actually is part of the canon now. And of course you see Professor X and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine saying, hold my beer, bub, like, because now that of course came before Spider-Man did. So if they canonize that, we'll go even further backwards. So again, pretty exciting possibilities that have come out of this. Like, I mean, I think we were all in the bag for Doctor Strange as it was, but the idea that they're going to continue to expand and grow and adopt more of the original comic book movies and really bring these things together is truly exciting.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And this is going to be in theaters in July, right?
Yeah, it's not far off, all things being equal.
Right, cool.
The next thing that we have for a trailer is Lord of the Rings. We got a little bit more of an actual look at things moving. Again, pretty, all things being equal, fast-moving trailer. We really didn't linger on a lot of shots for very long, but we did see a variety of different races from Middle-earth, and we saw, some different characters. And of course, they're setting it up as obviously it's a prequel to the Hobbit and to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so they can kind of do their own thing. Although one of the main characters will be Galadriel, who of course, was played by Cate Blanchett in the original Lord of the Rings movies. So there's familiar faces in there because there are some of these characters are essentially eternal.
Yeah, Galadriel and Elrond as well as in the trailer.
Yeah, which again, elves live a while. So I don't know. What did you guys did it get you any more or less excited?
I think I'm kind of less excited, to be honest with you. I mean, like, I like the Lord of the Rings thing, but I mean, the Lord of the Rings as a book was great, but I mean, it just seemed like the Lord of the Rings thing was all about the battles, right? And there was just too much going on. And then the Hobbit, broken down into 3 movies, was entirely too long.
Oh God, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that was a good book as a book, and it could have been a movie.
Even I can see splitting it into 2 because there is a bit of a natural break, maybe 2, but boy, 3 was too much. Yeah. So I've had a hard time going back and watching that again, but I did the whole finding of the ring and getting to the treasure and meeting the dragon. That was Smaug was a pretty cool part in the book, right? And I think didn't they get to Smaug in the first movie? No, the second one I think is Desolation of Smaug is the second movie. Right, yeah. And then the third one is when everybody comes for Smaug's treasure, right? Right, yeah. And then so I've already got a little Lord of the Rings fatigue, and to be honest with you, I think from a story point of view, it's more fascinating that there's one ring that survives the 9 rings as opposed to let's do a story about every cufflink and earring and neck chain. Like it's ridiculous. Like to think about it. So I don't know. I mean, plus I think the whole is this based in anything that's written by Tolkien, or is this apparently it's based on a lot of the appendices and expanded stuff, all the notes that he made and everything. So they bought the rights to sort of everything that he had ever conceived. So some of it is from the backstories that he wrote for the characters and some of the stuff that pre-existed. Right. Okay. I mean, where do you stand on Lord of the Rings? Do you have fatigue? I mean, I think the Hobbit movies kind of wore a few people out.
I don't really have fatigue because it's been some years. I don't know that I'm like super hyped for this, but I think it's something I'll watch similar to the Wheel of Time on Amazon. So hopefully it's good. Yeah. That's the best I can hope for. I know there were folks disappointed about comparatively minor and nitpicky details like, why don't the women dwarves have beards? I mean, that's a pretty interesting deep cut. And I don't think that this is a weird one because I think Lord of the Rings, the movies, the Peter Jackson films were absolutely not successes because of the hardcore fans.
No.
No matter how many times you saw it 20 times in its first run, that's cool. It was a mainstream film. It certainly helped, realize what the hardcore fans wanted, but you can't make mega movies that are super popular, the mainstream, by queuing to every nitty gritty detail. So I think it would have been weirder to have the women dwarves have beards. People have been like, what's going on? Why do they have? Oh, you don't remember this one casual comment that Aragorn makes? You haven't read, all the appendices? It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's a perfect point, Jaime. I think that's honestly what I think I had a problem with, and I know a lot of people had with The Hobbit, was they tried to sort of milk every little thing out of that. So they got into the different colored sorcerers and, Radagast and there was so much stuff that just should have been cut. As Tim said, you could have told it in 1 3-hour movie pretty easily. If you wanted to stretch it out into 2 movies at 2 hours 15 to 20, sure, okay, I get it. You want to make money, fine, whatever. But 3 and including every bit of minutia from a 260 page novel. Come on, it was too much. It was too much. All right, Jaime, tell us about Nope. Why? What's got you excited about Nope?
I mean, it says from writer-director Jordan Peele that kind of gets my interest right away, and then, gathers my attention with, they don't really reveal a whole lot. It's setting the stage, the mood of there's this horse ranch or dude ranch of some sort, person who has a character who has great, I don't know how many greats they said, grandfather, who was in the original first film of a horse, a cowboy on a horse sort of thing. So they certainly seem to be setting up some, Black history as part of the theme. And I don't know, it just looks kind of interesting of like, what the heck is causing these problems? What do they say? Nah, try to get out, try to nope themselves out of there. And it just seems like a cool movie to watch.
Yeah. Had you seen his previous two movies?
Get Out and oh crap, is it Us or Them? Because there's an Amazon series. Okay, Us. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a big horror movie, and I don't mean this in a denigrating way because I have not seen the movie, so I cannot speak to it. But my impression from watching the trailers, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, both of you, they feel like M. Night Shyamalan movies. They feel like what a twist. Like they feel like it's not what you think it is. It's something else. Like, and I wore out on M. Night Shyamalan after like a couple of movies. Are these better than that? I think, there is twisty stuff in there. I'm not going to deny that that's there. I think for me, it's kind of a different perspective. You get that Black culture perspective, and sorry, not Us. Get Out plays probably the most with that. I'd have to watch Us again to double check what goes on there. So I think that's one of the angles that I appreciate it from. I get your point, though, that if there's like a weird twist in this one, it'll feel like the what a twist thing that you mentioned from Robot Chicken.
Robot Chicken, yeah. What a twist. Yeah. Cool. All right. That's our wrap up of our favorite Super Bowl ad spots.
Cool.
Now we'll jump over to Netflix. So speaking of Marvel, which we were a few minutes ago, we got news this week that Marvel shows, the Marvel Netflix collaborative shows that were quite a milestone as far as for Netflix and for Marvel characters on TV, are going bye-bye. So Marvel's shows are leaving Netflix at midnight on March the 1st. So you have a very short window if you have not yet absorbed them all. And most interesting is that they're not leaving with a destination. It's not like they're being pulled off there and they're going to immediately reappear elsewhere. They're just gone. Now, there is a lot of speculation as to what the final fate of these will be. We even engaged in that a little bit in our Slack chat where we were talking about, well, what makes sense. Here in Canada, obviously, we have a little bit of flexibility with Disney Plus because we have the Star feature where Star is kind of containing Hulu content and more mature content. So they could put it on that here. In the United States, Disney Plus tends to be a little bit more sort of younger audience sort of catering. And, considering that the Marvel Netflix shows have graphic violence, language, sexuality, nudity, stuff like that, they seem unlikely to end up on Disney Plus. Hulu makes a little bit of sense given that Disney obviously owns the lion's share of it. But the other question is, again, do they want to put these in a drawer somewhere and be like, yeah, it never happened?
I think they could coordinate it off somewhere, whether much more distinctly in Hulu and then making the Hulu bundle with Disney Plus and ESPN Plus like that much more appealing, or an adults only, you got to choose the adult profile and enter in the special code to get to them sort of thing. I could see some options here with Disney Plus.
Yeah. And maybe that's it. Maybe there's a larger plan there for Disney Plus. But it'll be interesting, too, because, again, as we're starting to see, we talked about Doctor Strange, as we're starting to see this sort of absorption of past content in its way, will they find a way to canonize it, or will they say, oh, that was a completely alternate universe and, the characters that we've seen are, if we bring back a Daredevil character, even if it's played by Charlie Cox, then that's not necessarily the same character who had the exact same experiences, or they may just never make reference to that again. Like, you can watch it and you can say, well, I've seen that, but they don't have to acknowledge that that's something that he did.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder how they'll end up playing it. Multiverse of Madness stuff seems like it gives them an easy out. It'd be like, oh, it was the same thing, but then, Final Crisis Earth stuff happened and it collapsed into a singular reality, and now any inconsistencies are a result of the multiverse of madness collapsing back into one kind of thing.
Yep.
Like I could see a comic booky answer to that.
But it does spring to mind, like, again, you start thinking, like, how deep in the well do they go in this stuff? Again, are they going to try and find a way to truly canonize Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are they going to find a way to canonize, like, how far back do they go? Those original couple of Fantastic Four movies, the Ben Affleck Daredevil movies, like, how far down the rabbit hole do you go on this stuff, Or are they just going to pick and choose the things they like, right?
Well, they eventually brought Disney brought all the Star Wars stuff that they've done over the years, except I don't know the holiday special, but
they've listed it as exactly how they've described. Same thing with the old comic books and the old books. They're calling them legacies, right? They're not real. They're not canon. They're legacies. So same thing when they did the Geta Tartakovsky Clone Wars, right? They basically said this is a Clone Wars story, but it's not a canonized Clone Wars story. Yeah. So any of that stuff, the Ewoks live action stuff from TV, all the stuff that they put on Disney Plus are being clearly characterized as this is other, not part of the canon. So in Star Wars, the only things that are actually canon are the 11 theatrical movies plus Clone Wars, Rebels, and Bad Batch. And of course, Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett now, but that's it. That is the extent of canon. Although canon now also includes anything that is post Disney acquisition, anything in comic books, novels, and video games is also considered canon.
Interesting.
So again, Marvel hasn't made any clear distinctions as to what is and what isn't, and again, that gives them the flexibility to cherry pick, right?
Yeah. So you don't think those things are going to show up on some service, because Netflix is the only place to consume them?
Well, I guess
actually, no, they could come over to Disney Plus, though, right?
Well, that's the question. So what we don't know is who owns the rights. Does Disney have to pay a certain amount of money to Netflix to free them up? Or, who has the controlling interest? Is there, we knew when they canceled Daredevil and Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Punisher on Netflix, there was a caveat in the contract that said that those characters cannot appear in any Marvel property for 2 years. So that's why when they left, we never saw those characters until now. We're starting to see these little Easter eggs. So we're seeing, glimpses of Matt Murdock, and we're seeing glimpses of Jessica Jones' apartment. And so now they can work that stuff in if they want to, because they now have the full reverted rights of those characters. They can rehire those actors. They can do whatever they want. I wonder if there's any kind of caveat like that around putting these on other services after creating them with Netflix. If that says like, yeah, once you basically hit the end of this contract, we'll pull them off Netflix, but you can't put them anywhere else for a year, 2 years, 5 years. And if you want to, you have to pay us $20 million.
Right.
Which is chump change for Disney, but still. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what happens to them. I think, we've talked about, I just finished watching the final little bit that I hadn't seen yet. Tim, I know you were working your way through the Daredevil stuff. Jaime, I don't know how much you've watched of this stuff. Have you watched a lot of the Marvel Netflix stuff?
Let's see. I saw all of Jessica Jones. I saw all of Luke Cage. I saw Defenders. I think I've seen a little bit of Daredevil. I don't think I saw anything of Punisher.
Or Iron Fist?
Iron Fist, I didn't see it all, so that I kind of caught up on the details of the character in Defenders.
Yeah.
So when do I have to watch this by?
You have till the end of this month.
Oh, really? I can better pitter-pat. I guess better get back on it, because...
Yeah, it was with great disgust that my son had the same realization, because he was actually well ahead of me on watching them, and then I sort of made a committed effort recently to watch them, which actually worked out well for me, but now he's got, I think, 20 episodes to watch in 2 weeks, so he's got to kind of get at it.
Yeah, I'm only going to finish Daredevil. I don't think I'm going to watch any of the other stuff, but...
Yeah. Did you go back and watch Defenders?
Yes, I watched Defenders.
Yeah. Because it does really fit in with Daredevil continuity. Yeah, well, we'll see where it ends up. Again, interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they find a home for it, and more importantly, if they start to integrate those characters. Some of them are great. Like, I thought Mike Coulter was an amazing Luke Cage, and I thought obviously Kristen Ritter is a great Jessica Jones, and Charlie Cox is a great Daredevil, and Vincent D'Onofrio, an excellent Kingpin. Like, there's a lot of stuff to cherry pick out of there.
True. Yeah.
All right, next up, as we continue, a lot of headlines this week. News this week from Deadline.com that there is a new Blade Runner project in the works. This one is particularly interesting because it is a Blade Runner project that is a television program, live action from Ridley Scott, and set 50 years ahead of the most Blade Runner recent thing that we've seen. So Blade Runner 2099 is apparently in development at Amazon Studios. And Ridley Scott, who directed the original 1982 Blade Runner movie with Harrison Ford, is apparently going to be the creative person behind this. And it is a follow-up. It is a follow-up to Blade Runner 2049, which I know I loved. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
again, part of that was obviously Denis Villeneuve is just a beautiful, beautiful eye and a wonderful filmmaker. But really, really interesting to see if this actually comes to fruition. Obviously, things are in development. You never know if that's a guarantee. But really curious to see what they do with moving it forward, and particularly interesting to see what comes with a time jump when we come 50 years ahead of what we've seen, and we've seen a pretty interesting vision of the future. Where does it go from there? So the original Blade Runner movie was supposed to be set in 2019, and we jumped to 2049. Now we're jumping ahead another 50 years to 2099. Obviously the nice thing about that is they're not beholden to having to cast Harrison Ford. They're not beholden to necessarily have to cast
Ryan
Gosling or any of the other actors that appeared in the most recent theatrical iteration. But of course you could. I mean, I'm not sure that he wants to do an Amazon TV show, but
yeah, I just hope it doesn't turn into like Matrix 3, right? Like,
yeah,
because I mean that was a sort of the end of the movie. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. It's been years now. Come on, folks. They sort of meet the underground, survivalists who are behind the sort of can androids have kids kind of deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that maybe do we actually go and find this mythical surviving baby or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Kay at the end of it kind of just meets these people and discovers that there is this sort of myth, it's almost like lore, like this they're trying to find this evidence of this child that was born of Rachel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably Rachel Decker, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
But or Deckard, and I just I kind of wonder, like, sometimes do they write these things just because they're trying to capitalize? I mean, Denis Villeneuve did a great job on the second movie, right?
Yep.
And it was enough to leave it as it own. I mean, there were some characters in there I would like them to explore, or some things about the society, like the whole underground that the underground people like that Mackenzie Davis came
mm-hmm.
from, and and even the robotic partner that Kay has,
the Anna de Armas character,
virtual, that was pretty cool stuff, and the fact that she was like anytime you saw sort of a virtual woman, it was the same actress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
that kind of was interesting, and I mean, but the thing is, the first movie was about the lifespan, right?
Mm-hmm.
About wanting more life. The second one was more about this, the search for this mythical child, right? And who is the child, and is Kay really the child? Because Kay has the memories, but
mm-hmm.
Those are implants, right? So I just hope he doesn't wreck it.
I know that's always the fear is although we talked about this, I would always take a sequel to a prequel. I am really fed up, and I'll be honest, even that's the part of the Lord of the Rings thing that's kind of turning me off, is stop looking backwards.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
I think that's why I like The Mandalorian and Boba Fett so much more than I like, some of the things that they've done in other stories where it's like backwards. We're always looking backwards, I don't care what they were like when they were kids. I don't care.
Yeah, Rogue One was okay, right, as a standalone movie.
It was, but because it wasn't it was a prequel, but it wasn't a prequel to certain characters or situations we'd seen previously.
Last scene,
yeah, but more or less, it was sort of on the fringes of what we knew. It wasn't about, oh, wouldn't you like to see him when they were a little kid? Like, nope, no, thank you.
Yeah, and then the whole, and my objection to the third Star Wars movie, the third of the prequels, right? Because it was kind of like the last 20 minutes was, and then you get into the whole, like it doesn't fit because, like, it's the Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't ever remember owning a droid,
yeah.
and then he doesn't know who he doesn't know who Luke and Leia's parents are. Like, hello. Yeah. Do you remember dropping those two kids off?
Yeah, I think accidentally when they took at the end of that movie when they took C-3PO to have his mind wiped, that Obi-Wan was like standing too close to the door or something.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, I didn't know that C-3PO had his mind wiped.
Yeah, no, that's one of the last things that Bail Organa says in the things is basically take the protocol droid and have his mind wiped. That's why C-3PO doesn't remember all of these adventures is because he says mind wiped, but R2 does because he hasn't.
Right. And that's almost stolen from, I don't know, I think I told you about the Robots of Dawn book by Asimov, right? It's this the Caves of Steel and Naked Sun and Robots of Dawn are a trilogy about this Earthman named Elijah Bailey who does like whodunit detective stuff with R. Daniel Ovalon. Ovalon is a robot. It was like an android, right?
Yep.
Humanoid android. And there's this other sort of trash can robot, like not quite trash can, but this other robot that is like the R2-D2 and has telepathic abilities, and he's manipulating all these other characters in the Robots of Dawn to make them do what they do. And Elijah Bailey discovers this and figures it out at the end, like that's that it was actually this other robot that was behind the thing, but he was doing it in a sort of benevolent way of manipulating people and other sentient android robot-y kind of people. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting. So he's kind of like the R2-D2. So it's kind of like R2-D2 is sort of his whole arc is almost the same as that other robot, right, from the Asimov stories.
Yeah.
Being like he's the missing link, and then like we see him in Book of Boba Fett, plugging in the pieces of the fact that he stuck around with Luke and went through Luke's training with him, right? Sort of thing,
Yep. Blade Runner have any interest to you, Jaime? A TV show?
I might end up watching it. It kind of depends on what the premise ends up being, I think. I enjoyed 2049.
So did you know the Altered Carbon, did you get through season 2?
I never did go back and watch season 2. I've only seen season 1.
Yeah, I watched like maybe 3 episodes of season 2, and it just didn't work for me, right? So I might have to go back and watch it again, but because I've seen some screenshots from the latest version, but yeah, the first one was really good, but I found the second one was kind of like almost prequelish, So that's why I kind of lost interest in it. Yeah, I mean, like when you have these arcs that kind of resolve themselves, like you get the whole beginning, middle, and end kind of thing. There aren't any loose ends. I mean, in Matrix, admittedly, there were some loose ends, right?
Yeah.
That they felt they wanted to do. But, I just, what do they call that? What's the world called where the free people live?
Zion?
Zion. Yeah, I just I couldn't get into Zion at all.
What? They're having dance parties. It's a thing.
Well, that's true. I saw that on Fraggle Rock. I think I had enough of that. Have you watched the new Fraggle Rock?
No. I noticed that it had been
The Doozers are animated and they talk.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, that's wrong, right?
Yep.
I mean, they still look like finger puppets, but yeah, the fact that their mouths move and they have conversations, that's wrong.
Yeah, that's a little scarring.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Speaking of scarring.
Yeah, well, no, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this one. So one of my very favorite former daily newspaper strips, now an online strip, Bloom County, which ran for a long time in the 80s and 90s and then took a long hiatus and then came back a number of years back by creator Berkeley Breathed, is being developed as a animated series.
What?
So I don't know what to make of this. It's an animated series at Fox through its animation studio, Bento Box Entertainment. Just like the strip, it will center on a collapsed lawyer, a lobotomized cat, and a penguin in briefs with wearing fruit headwear, living in the world's last boarding house in the world's most forgotten place deep in the dandelion wilds of Fly Way Over Country. To wit, today's America at a glance. So I love Burke Breathe's sense of humor. It's always resonated with me. It was something that I one of the first sort of newspaper strips that I was drawn to. Really liked the characters, really liked the vibe, read all the books, read all the characters. I am currently right across my desk from me, I have a stuffed Opus the Penguin and a stuffed Bill the Cat, which my grandmother gave me when I was probably 10, maybe 11 years old. And yeah, I love it. They did do an animated special at one point a number of years back. They did a Christmas special based on one of Breathe's books called A Wish for Wings That Work, and they did a 22-minute animated special on that, which was pretty good. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this is like, whether or not this works in this format. But I must admit, I'm intrigued because I do love these characters so much. Bill the Cat is one of my very favorites, and I'm curious to see what this looks like in this format.
Well, interesting. Yeah, you're right. I've forgotten that they had. I was trying to think. Like I was trying to remember why I have it in my head a voice, Opus's voice, right? But
yeah.
But yeah, that makes sense with the other animated piece already.
Yep.
So, we'll see. Like you said, I like the characters too, right? So
yeah.
I use Bill all the time when people need to be told. Yep.
I think it's going to be interesting because it's a strangely adult kind of comic strip. Adults in both the Bill the Cat and others just get into like weird implied sex and nudity type stuff, and then adults in the existentialism and the craziness of politics and taxes and stuff. It's a strange one. It's not like a South Park or a Simpsons or something. Bob's Burgers. It's very odd to turn that into series after all this time, but I think he still does the stuff on Twitter. I don't know if he's anywhere. It's almost like a webcomic now. Very different than catching the newspaper strips or the collected works compendiums at Barnes and Nobles or something.
Yeah, we follow him on Facebook, and he posts every now and then to Facebook. Mm-hmm. But it's funny, like you said about this, sort of reminds me of, like I posted you guys in Slack the other day that I was asked to tune into Netflix on one of our TVs upstairs so my granddaughter could watch Octonauts Ring of Fire. We'll have a link in the show notes for that, of course. But as I turned on Netflix, of course they're advertising Disenchantment, right? Or Disenchanted, what's it called? And she immediately says, "Oh, what's that? What's that about?" I'm like, "Oh, hell no!" And try to no. It has adult theme. She says, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, not for you." But thanks, Netflix,
Yeah, trying to avoid the stuff with the blackout drinking and the sex with dwarves and elves.
All the more reason to have child profiles on your account. Right?
Yeah,
to be able to have one, right? So anyway, too bad. Oh, look, it's Simon's turn to talk.
Paramount Plus has apparently done the math and said, we need something besides Star Trek, and it costs a lot of money to make these costumes in CGI. What if we just go ahead and have a second season already, not
of
in
a show we haven't even seen, right?
In the works for the Halo TV show that comes out in about a month. This just seems like good business sense to me. They're talking about it as like being reflects the confidence we have in the power of this series. I'm like, okay, sure, but I'm thinking you thought the math made sense. That it would cost you only incremental dollars to make a season 2. Might as well just have it queued up, ready to start being produced.
Yeah, so. I think the phrase there is "in for a penny, in for a pound," right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's hope for Pamela and Tommy season 2.
Oh, good.
So Halo first season, March 24th, 2022.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it makes perfect sense. And honestly, I'd have been surprised if they didn't make more than one season of this anyways, just given the popularity of the franchise. Like when I saw it, I honestly didn't go the same place you did. I was just like, well, obviously they like what they saw, and they were like, money, 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 merchandising, money, 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 money.
Yeah. Well, I guess they don't make hot messes anymore, right? Like they used to.
Well, I'll see you and raise you Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment yet.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's still some messiness about. All right. Well, speaking of video games, we also got news this week that Netflix has acquired the rights to BioShock, the popular video game franchise series. So this one is, again, it's right there with Uncharted and Halo, frankly, as, you know, one of the 21st century sort of hit games that everyone has talked about, like, oh, that would be a great TV show, that would make a great movie. But it's kind of floated around. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not it would, you know, happen. There have been sort of ties in the past. They've talked about, you know, apparently Gore Verbinski, who did Pirates of the Caribbean, was going to do it at one point. But yeah, now Netflix has apparently acquired it, and they're looking to develop a potential cinematic universe. So a series of films potentially based on the BioShock universe. So BioShock, for those who do not know, is a video game series that initially is set in this underwater world that is sort of how would you describe it? It's like this sort of dilapidated underwater city. It's called Rapture, and there are these sort of monsters and mutants that have sort of taken over the place. You in the video games are the protagonist who has to sort of modify yourself to try and overcome these impediments, to try and find out the mystery of what happened here and why, and that. It's a tremendous video game series. I've really enjoyed playing it. Dark and scary at times. There's a scene in the first one that still haunts my dreams, where you're basically in an underground and under this, you know, under the sea morgue, and all of a sudden the lights go out, and then all of a sudden these mutants just start attacking you in the dark. It's really quite unsettling. So I wonder how the vibe of it will be. I wonder sort of how they envision this coming together as a sort of cinematic universe. But I think I would definitely want to see it if they make it. Jaime, have you played BioShock?
A long time ago, and I was kind of wondering about the big daddy and the little daughters. I forget what they call the.
Yeah, I can't remember what they call the little ones anymore. Little sisters. Little sisters. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a weird, interesting one. I'm trying to think of what the style cinematically would be like, and maybe House on Haunted Hill would be a pretty good cinematography. What's the word here? Cinematographical, whatever the word is there.
It's a movie.
Use the cinematography similar to that. It might give you the right mood, especially for things that you talked about, like the morgue scenes.
Yeah, could be cool.
All right.
In lighter news, Paramount Plus is saying, hey, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I should say, the movie that's coming out. We believe so much in it, we're going to give you a Knuckles TV show with apparently Idris Elba is the Knuckles the Echidna.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll voice
that. We already talked about him being the Echidna, right?
Mm-hmm. In the movie, and now he will continue that role in the Knuckles TV show, Paramount Plus.
Right. And will he hang out and sell drugs and stuff, or what's the deal? Not gonna.
Dark, dude. Dark.
Wow. Like, you guys paying attention or what?
We're just going to keep you hanging there for a minute or two. Let that sink in for the audience.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, that again, I still haven't seen the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, so I can't say that I'm excited for a
and you don't know what Knuckles sells, so you really don't know.
No, that's true. Yeah, Knuckles coming. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how they continue to spin this stuff forward. But I mean, I get why it works. I get who they're going for. Like, you know, they're timeless characters. Like, I'm glad that Sega's finally getting a little more love. I'm glad that new generations will enjoy these characters as we did playing these games way back when. And, you know, cool. I'm glad they're doing it. I still find it incredibly weird that an incredibly talented performer like Idris Elba is
exactly.
Like, did they back the Brinks truck up to his house, or did they just have it delivered? Like, how did they, like, what's happening?
Maybe it's the only thing he could do during COVID. I mean, you know, who knows, right?
Yeah, maybe he just doesn't want to leave the house. Like, but it's just like, wow, that's, I mean, that's a little off the beaten path for somebody who has been such an incredible performer through his whole career.
True. Yeah. One more, I think, right?
Two more.
Two more.
Two more.
Okay, let's hit him quick.
All right. We've talked about the gotta catch 'em all wars that are going on with all these streaming services. Well, one big domino came down this week that I thought was really interesting. So South Park and Beavis and Butthead are going to be moving exclusively to Paramount Plus. This is pretty monstrously huge, given that these are, iconic animated franchises that have huge followings and could potentially be, big momentum turns for the streaming service. So South Park is going to continue to air new episodes on Comedy Central, and that's going to continue for the short term. Their library right now, they licensed it initially to HBO Max, and it's going to stay there until 2025, at which point it's going to revert to Paramount Plus. Paramount, of course, owns Comedy Central. And then starting in 2024, new episodes of the show on South Park are going to start airing first on, in the US, it says, on Paramount Plus. So we talked about this when they announced those movies, those sort of mini movies that they were doing in the fall, that those are exclusively on Paramount Plus. They aren't on Comedy Central, and they aren't available here in Canada on any other service. So we're starting to see a tipping point, kids, where, they're now starting to put some very good content that is exclusively to there on those platforms. So warm up your wallets, because you may be shelling out for South Park, shelling out for Paramount Plus if you want to see South Park in the future, and you'd be naive to think that there isn't something like this that is going to happen to Star Trek eventually.
True.
So yet another domino falls.
Yeah, it's definitely an area where Viacom, CBS, Paramount, that whole sort of shebang, it sort of makes sense to try to put together what Disney pretty much had from day one on Disney Plus, right? Try to assemble all of this content. So it definitely makes a lot of sense to me for them to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked in the past about how, Netflix's original model was buy the licenses for all this stuff and put it on their service. More and more, as these places saw that the kind of money that they were raking in, they wanted to reclaim those things. So as these contracts continue to expire over the next number of years, more and more things they're going to say, like, to hell with you getting our rights to our stuff. We want our own money staying in our own pockets. And even though they can license them for tens or hundreds or thousands of millions of dollars, they certainly could, keep them on their own service and keep charging the public for them right there, and then try and get them hooked on more shows and try and go from there. So
yeah, interesting. Cool. All right, last one.
In an increasingly common thing to do, you've got the upcoming season, which is the penultimate, which means the next to last. So it's not the final season, but next to last season of Stranger Things. Season 4 is going to be split into what they're calling two volumes. So the volume 1 of season 4 premieres May 27th, and volume 2 premieres July 1st. And we get the hint in this article here that we have in the show notes for those of you transporting at home that apparently it was so packed to the brim with stuff that they're hurtling towards the finale in season 5, planned out finale.
So we're getting a 2-part season 4 and then a season 5.
Yeah, and if you've seen, what is it, like Walking Dead has like the final season trilogy, and This Is Us. This
3
Is
parts,
Us.
yeah, exactly.
This Is Us has like the final season split volume or something. Like, it's increasingly common for TV shows to be doing this.
So essentially they're putting you on the hook for more or less what is 2 more seasons this year, and then a season 5 that they may well split again. So you can argue the semantics. It may be one big story, but it's really kind of more seasons and more seasons and more seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're finally getting a date on this. I mean, although it has been so darned long now, I legit am going to have to back and watch the whole thing over again. Like, I have forgotten more about Stranger Things than I remember now. It's been so long.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I remember the highlights. I remember the high level stuff, particularly the first season, because I thought that was certainly the strongest thing that they probably put together. But I don't have a lot of strong memories. I remember vaguely like the Russians and stuff in season 3. But yeah, like I just feel like by the time this comes around, I might make the point of sitting down to watch it again, just because I don't remember a lot of the details. Because it's been, what, 3 years?
Has it really?
Yeah.
Wow. Are they playing their parents now, or what?
Well, I know they filmed some of it like pre-pandemic. They were already filming it, so I don't know if that stuff's just been sitting in the can, or if they've gone back and reshot, or how they've dealt with all this stuff. But it will be interesting to see. I mean, again, I think it's meant to have taken, like, spoilers if you haven't watched season 3, but it kind of ends with a sort of an ending that allows for them to let time pass in a logical way, that they can then bring the kids back together again for the next season to solve the next big mystery or whatever. It will be really interesting to see how they accomplish that, because it's like, I think I could see if they were like, oh, and the kids hadn't seen each other for like 9 months or 6 months, but 3 years is a lot. And some of those kids are starting to look less like kids.
True. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, it's that time of the show where we start talking about something Star Trek shaped. And this time we're talking about season 4, part 2, episode 9, Rubicon, or Discovery. So I'll leave it to Jaime to do the recap.
Yeah, I'll start right off that I recognize the name of the title of the episode of Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon. The TLDR for that is, normally when you're a Roman general, you're not supposed to bring the army back beyond a certain point. And it was like a crime for anybody to follow you if they did, beyond it being a crime for you to do so yourself. And Caesar crossing the Rubicon, despite being kind of a non-event from like what they actually did, all they literally did was go across the river, was a hugely impactful point of no return, as people say, where at that point war was inevitable, civil war in this case, and Caesar ended up becoming dictator for life until his life ended. But the point of no return is, I think, what's intended to be implied in this title.
Right.
Yep.
So keep that in mind, because that comes up towards the end of the episode. So we have Nan back. Not only on the crew, she's got her AirPod breathers that are easier to deal with than the big braces headgear that she had before. She's got something a little bit swankier, and she's Starfleet security. She is specifically back to shank Booker if necessary, right? So the sort of thing that's going to happen here is, okay, Booker and Tarka have a spore drive. The only thing that can catch up to them is the Discovery. They're going to go ahead and let Michael Burnham captain the Discovery, but they do not trust her, given her relationship with Booker, to shoot him if need be. So instead, Nan is here to seal the deal, right? To shank him.
Was that a Freudian slip, or was that meant to be there?
It's so hard. I probably wouldn't have said it if I wasn't looking at the name in the notes. Like phonetically, it wouldn't have hit me, but seeing the NH in the notes did that. We've also got another sort of B plot here with Saru and President Trina from Navarre. He has kind of a nice little tender moment with her.
Hang on a second. Let me get the soundtrack going for you.
Yeah, in a Kelpian and Vulcan emotionless kind of way, it's very obvious that they have a thing for each other, right? They connect with each other even
on a Zoom call.
On their Zoom call. Yeah. So, in the main plot, you've got the Discovery that's going to, cloak and jump over to Booker's and Tarka's known location. They think with the element of surprise. And they're going to send a little shuttle because they can't go sort of all the way into the little asteroid because the Discovery is just literally too big. But Tarka apparently is one of those roommates who makes modifications to your house and laid a trap for the shuttle without telling Booker that hey, by the way, I modified your ship because this is a huge deal for him, right? Remember, he wants to get to that other universe and he needs the power source from the DMA. Booker is it's interesting because he is sort of seemingly had this what you would call a heel turn in if this was professional wrestling, but sort of not really, right? He's like only willing to go so far, and it's really clear that he's not willing to go quite as far as Tarka of like hurting the people that he's been friends with, right? So he tries his hardest to help save the crew members who are was it Saru, Dr. Culber, Reese, and Bryce on the shuttle, right? They get saved at like the last second, and he just like,
was I alone in just trying to remember which one was Reese and which one was Bryce?
Oh man, nope. That is so difficult. They're trying to do more, with them, but it's very challenging at this point.
Sorry, I was going to say, please help us. Like, that's not fair to have two guys whose names are so similar and yet have so sparingly appear. Like, they've been supporting background players for this whole run, but not like major players.
What was the little cat fight that they had at the beginning of that scene about? Like,
well, I think the whole point was they were trying to establish that there are people who see both sides, right? I think again, if you take this whole season of Discovery as a metaphor for politics in their current environment and say things to do with current state of affairs in the world as far as people's perspectives on what they have the rights to and what they don't, I think the idea is that they wanted to point out that it's not like we're all marching in lockstep because we have to. It's that their people have their own opinions, right?
Yeah, and it is something that Saru, like several times throughout this episode, has to be like, look, whatever your personal opinions are in the situation, we have orders to do X, and we're going to do X. Like, as I mentioned, that Booker books it after saving the crew members of the shuttle. The whole thing is they're going to try to use the isolytic weapon. I forget what it was called. The big weapon. They're going to use it to blow up the DMA.
Yep.
Right? So Discovery has to try to find Booker. They eventually do. They know he will be near the DMA. They're not quite sure where exactly the DMA itself is, other than in a very sort of broad sense, given what it does to sensors and how large it is. And they engage in some kind of interesting tactics versus tactics where Booker's trying to use, different kind of cool little tricks that Michael's like, okay, I remember he did something like this, so we're going to try to counter it with that. And they kind of, do cool spacey stuff, right? Here's where the con thing should be, right? They're kind of vaguely in like a nebula-ish kind of thing, attacking each other with limited ability, blinding each other kind of thing. And eventually, like, the Discovery's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to put ourselves right next to that toasty DMA controller, and like, we're going to make them shoot through us, right? At least we can physically block this. And they do this kind of interesting tit for tat spore jumps and stuff to try to like get in a better position. There's some back and forth love tap torpedoes of like, hey, this is a warning shot, you need to get out. No, this is a warning shot to you, you get out. Until Tarka just loses, I don't know, he's got an itchy trigger finger or something, like he sends that full spread, right? And you've got this situation where Michael says, look, all right, rather than everybody going with Nan's plan to, like, I don't know, torpedo some particular area that because Booker's area ship has the spore drive, the prototype spore drive.
Just like shooting womp rats in your T-16 back home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Michael decides, nope, I'm going to do the Michael thing. I'm going to risk my life specifically to get to Booker. So she gets in a shuttle, parks really close to him so that she can, talk to him. And she took a look at Book and, kind of convinced him that, like, hey, you know what? What Stamets and Zora found is that this DMA is mining boromite, and it will take about a week or so before it, finishes its job and moves on. So, there's that much time to try to talk to the 10C species, 10C, beyond the galactic barrier, see if we can convince them to stop it diplomatically. Tarka has...
Can we have a sidebar for a second? So I kind of was on Nan's side there for a minute. I probably was on her side before she even voiced the words, but she says to Michael at one point, you realize he's shooting at us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right?
Yeah.
So,
was that the Rubicon behind you there?
Well, so like the two of them are firing like
quantum torpedoes
at each other, and phasers and like I don't know. I just like if you're on the same side with somebody, like, and they pull out a gun and start shooting at you, and you start shooting back. that's a little bit beyond just sort of having a mild disagreement, or difference of opinion. I just like, how do they, like, where's the justice in that? I mean, like if this was real life, they'd be having to fill out reports on all the bullets they use, But like as soon as they started shooting each other, I'm like, wait a minute, like why don't you just blow the guy out of the water if he's going to start firing at us, right?
Because love. Anyway, that's why. Right?
Yeah. That makes sense for Michael's opinion of what Booker is doing and would do and would not do.
So these are love taps, like you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The part that sort of loses out on that sort of viewpoint is, but Tarka's in there too. How do you know Tarka didn't, shoot Book in the back of the head?
Exactly. Well, we know it was Tarka, but she doesn't know that.
Yeah, and surprise, surprise, he does, some itchy trigger finger stuff, and he beams the device over to the
Twice
DMA.
in the same episode. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You need the touch ID or the face ID for that sort of stuff, right? Don't let him do anything other than be a passenger. He blows up the DMA stuff, but he's unable to find that power source that he desperately wanted because
he blew it up.
They thought that they blew up the DMA controller thing, and then the null space shield thing would keep the power source by hand. Because remember, he wanted to use that power source to get his way over to the other side of not the other side of the wormhole, over to that other universe, right?
Right, yeah.
But apparently, there was no power source left behind because the DMA is powered from the other side of the wormhole. So its power is not on this side. And so we do get, back on the ship that Non apparently didn't get much closure from her modern family when she went to go catch up with them, and obviously couldn't tell them, hey, I'm from the past, time traveler. She didn't get a whole lot out of it. That's why she ended up doing the Starfleet security, Black Ops side of stuff. We end up with the B story about Saru and President Trina, where Saru goes over to Dr. Culber, asks for essentially love advice, and gets told in a professional opinion that he's being an idiot.
Well, he wants to know how to ghost her, first of all, right?
I really like her, but I never want to talk to her again.
Yeah. And it turns out, separately from that the DMA is easily replaced. It just shows up right again. And I have a link here to a great Reddit image, which has somehow the DMA is returned with Poe Dameron from Rise of Skywalker. And we end with the end of the episode, which is that, first contact has been made with this species. They definitely know that we are here and that we did something. So that's the crossing the Rubicon sort of thing that we talked about from the title.
Yeah.
But we don't get a lot of sort of closure on what this thing sort of reappears, but what's the consequences for Book and Tarka? I'd like to see, shouldn't they have been in chains or fired out of an airlock or something by now?
Yeah,
exactly. They should be in the brig or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I have a lot of respect for the original series. They threw people in the brig all the time.
Yeah, to be fair, that was kind of their go-to move. I don't know if that was an American 1960s thing where they're being a problem, put them in jail.
Yeah. We'll let them out later, but yeah. Did they have a brig on Next Generation? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
They must have, yeah?
They do. I don't feel like they used it quite as much as DS9 did, given that it was Odo's favorite place to have people.
What was the one they had in the Mirror Universe episodes of Discovery? It was the pain booth or whatever, where they not only did they put them
the agonizer.
The agonizer. There you go.
Yeah,
oh god, I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah, no, not every ship needs to have an agonizer, not just a brig, right?
Well, I like the one that they had in the original series, Mirror Universe. It just pushed a button and it disappeared.
Yeah.
Boing. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I guess the question is the crossing the Rubicon that Book and Tarka can't go back from what they've done, or that now Starfleet and the Federation can't go back from what they've done? Because
I feel like it's yes.
Yeah,
I feel
like
it's
both,
yes
I guess,
is the
right?
answer.
Yeah.
I think that generally is what First Contact means, is that they want to basically make, you can't, if an alien landed on the Earth right now and came in some sort of super drive whatever thing, that would be, for us, would be a First Contact event, because we couldn't go back from that, right? And, they talked about that in sci-fi stories in the past, but, so that's where that comes from. But But I don't know. Like, did you find this to be an exciting episode?
No, because there's no stakes. You knew that in the ninth episode of season 4 of Discovery, they weren't going to just vaporize Tarka and Book. So there was no stakes. There wasn't.
Yeah.
The worst they could have done is to have Book act so awful that it was over, like irreparably over between him and Michael. And even that seemed unlikely.
Yeah, except for the fact that they were shooting each other, but
No, but did you ever in any of those moments think, like, when they're like, "Oh, the shields are down to 20%," I'm like, so what? Like, there's no way that they're going to be like, "Well, the shields are down. I guess we're fried." Like, and everyone on Discovery
let's finish them off. Exactly.
Yeah. So. Exactly. It's hard to have those moments and take them incredibly serious. Obviously, the biggest stakes I think that were on the line in this episode weren't, oh, they're going to hurt each other, they're gonna die. Again, even when Bryce and Reese and Culber and Saru are on the shuttle and the shuttle's about to get destroyed, I never was like, oh my God, one of these guys is getting like I never really had a moment where I was like, they're all gonna die. Like. I feel like the only thing that was truly on the line in this episode was Book's crossing the Rubicon, right? His inability, his doing something, making a choice that was so far beyond where we'd seen him go so far that he could never rebuild that bridge with Michael, the Federation, Starfleet, his friends on Discovery. That was really the only thing that was at line in this episode. And even then, again, they're not going to do that in episode 9. It's just television writing, right? They're just not going to do that now.
Well, and do you find that, just in general, do you find the DMA to be that threatening a thing? Like, are you really that worried about the current universe of Star Trek?
Well, we talked about it, I think, on previous seasons, where you kind of wish that they didn't just wrap things up in a bow to a certain extent where there's no long-term consequences. I guess we've seen that a smidgen on this side of, the Emerald Chain from last season. They essentially neutered them in one season, right? Like, and this season, again, we had the hint of like, well, there's still remnants out there. Non talked about that in this episode. Last week, we got the 2 people that were playing the poker game with them that were trying to get this, isolinium that could be used to make a terrorist weapon. But really, we built up this big bad over the course of the season and then knocked it out by the end of the season.
Yeah,
there's something to be said for just continuing to build something that's bigger or scarier or everything. Do you guys honestly think that we aren't going to have a resolution by the end of the season to the DMA, to the barrier, to all this stuff, that we aren't going to have basically a reset and then go into the next season? We know we're getting a next season. They've already confirmed they're doing another season.
Yeah.
Are there long-term effects? Are there long-term consequences?
Well, see, this is the thing. Like this Emerald Chain. I mean, it was a pretty menacing thing, or even the sort of the way that the mining sort of those rogue miners on that one planet where that scoundrel was there. I've forgotten his name now. The husband from the telepathic Arquette show, but they could have like this is the beauty of the original series, is that they had the Klingon adversaries, they had the Cardassians, they had the Borg, They didn't wipe them out, like you said, in 5 episodes. They kept them around. Like Darth Vader, they kind of bounced them off and spun them out away, and then they would come back later on, right? So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot by taking away that kind of tension from like they could have had more of these cool leather-clad Emerald Chain women around, charging around, bossing people around, right? But like the first, like even this the Red Angel thing, they kind of wrapped that one up pretty quickly, and then they never really went anywhere with that, and the whole sort of mystery of, we've lost the whole mystery of Michael's parents, and like that was kind of an unwritten, unknowable trauma for her, right? It's funny when she was sitting in her ready room and she calls in Non. They say, "Please sit," and they both sit down. Like, now she's like Picard all of a sudden, or Janeway without the coffee, I just find it odd that this was the same woman we watched in prison garb in the second episode or first episode of the show, right? It's really weird writing, I find, almost weak.
Well, I mean, but at the same time, I guess the point of that is that we're supposed to see her evolve, right? Like it's supposed to be her evolving over the course of time.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, she's really towing the company line from being the sort of rebel in the past, right?
Yeah, true. And running around with a pirate for, who knows, like that whole mystery, that missing season of, where she bounces into the future and there's like, 5 years before Discovery catches up with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's running around with Book, wreaking havoc, right? So...
Yep. And apparently learning all kinds of cool tricks that they now deployed in last episode and then deployed in this episode. Again, they keep sort of referring to the fact that they know each other so well, right? They know what they're trying to do. They know what they're trying to get, but again, that lowered the stakes, right? Because they know each other so well, you were never like, oh, she's going to get him here. Like, he predicted what she was going to do. She predicted what he was going to do. And really the only wild card in there was that Tarka has a little bit of that, I don't care, I'll do whatever it takes kind of thing. And we saw that when he fired that spread of quantum torpedoes. Maybe, he's enough of a wild card. I mean, obviously he weaseled his way into Book's brain and tipped him over to the dark side a little bit a few episodes back.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe he's enough of a wild card that things change. I mean, really, I that was the only thing I was kind of waiting for in this episode. Was at one point I was waiting for Tarka just to crack Book in the back of the head and take the ship and do whatever he wanted. In the end, he didn't have to. He just fired that thing. Like, hey, maybe if you don't trust this guy, don't let him be able to shoot that thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Book, I'm not sure if it's the actor or whatever, but like that sort of half smile with the puppy dog eyes that he has. I mean, I just don't buy him as a scoundrel, right?
Yeah, yeah. But then he's, again, they've established that he has this sort of code, right? Like, he's not just a hard ass. He does, care deeply for things. He's not supposed to be Han Solo. He's supposed to be, a little more empathetic.
True. But yeah, I don't know. I just, I'm not really buying it as much as I would in previous Star Trekkies kind of things, right?
Yeah. So where do we go from here? We basically now we know that they can just pop in DMAs anywhere they want. And now they know that something on the other side of their barrier is messing with their giant mining device. Do you think it's...
Well, they clearly have a whole, yard full of DMAs ready to deploy one at a moment's notice, right?
Well, and they said that Bryce was working on trying to figure out how to communicate with them, right? They mentioned that twice in this episode, that Bryce was busy working on the solution to try and figure out how we could talk to them. So is that the next step? We're going to see the real try and attempt to actually communicate with them in the next couple episodes?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've moved away from the sort of how does this spore drive work on the mycelial network, and I mean, there was some interesting with I've forgotten, what was it, Lorca? Mm-hmm. With him and sort of the mystery of which parallel universe did he come from, kind of thing. That was kind of that. The first season was kind of interesting that way, and they've kind of lost that tension that they had, right?
Yeah.
Like I forgot that Stamets is working on trying to figure this thing out. Like, to be honest with you, until they flash back to him and he's trying to figure it out. Have you figured it out yet? No, I haven't figured it out. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Why bother even having that scene? Yeah. Well, let somebody else work on it. You come up here to the ship and help us. I forgot what the point was today, but
Yeah.
We have junior engineers for that task.
Yeah, we have our new ensign. Her name is the ship, right? She does that stuff.
Oh yeah, Zora. Yeah, Zora can figure stuff out. Let Zora do it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. She's like, I'm not your servant. When does my shore leave begin?
Exactly. They don't need shore leave. That's the whole beauty of them, right?
Yeah, really. And
I actually went back and watched Calypso. She gets a holographic body and dances with the dude. Yeah.
It still seems really weird to think, like, I saw the commercial today that's we're only 2 weeks away from Picard starting too. So again, we're going to get this overlap starting in 2 weeks of wrapping up Disco, but then starting up Picard. I don't know why they do that.
Did you guys see the next week thing at the end of the episode?
No.
Yeah, it's right at the very tail end of, and they flash back and forth. Apparently there are more plot points coming next week.
Oh, well.
Did you see something, Jaime? And it was pretty flashy back and forth, and, there were some, interesting looking graphics that they threw at us. And
no, it sounds like you got something different. They don't show the next time trailer here on the episode. You have to go to the Ready Room, and Will Wheaton gives it in like the final 2 minutes of that episode, which in this one was much more like normal. It was the president talking to Admiral Vance, and she's like, I'm going to go on this excursion to go talk to 10C. I'm giving my powers of presidency to the vice president.
Oh, really? Huh. Yeah, there was. I mean, so I almost missed it because, like I said, there's like a whole 5 minutes of commercials, and then the show ends. But I had accidentally hit the fast forward button, and then I realized that there was a little bit of Michael Burnham at the end. So I went back and replayed it, sort of like a next time on Discovery, and bounced around, showed some images and DMA and things like that. So there's more tension coming. Maybe, sorry, there's tension coming. Maybe
real tension this time. Woo-hoo!
Yeah, not like this time. This is the 10th episode, so it's going to be so much better. It's going to lead into the 11th episode, right? Exactly. Stay tuned for the 11th episode. All right. Look, guess what? There's no Book of Boba Fett to talk about.
There's no Book of Boba Fett, and there is, in fact, no new Disney Plus Marvel/Star Wars show forecast for the next month plus. Which I just feel like somebody somewhere in the programming division just dropped the ball, because they have been so consistent on giving us like piece of content after piece of content. And
speaking of Disney Plus, as you know, I've been catching up on. I've had I've been doing some exercise and stuff, and while I'm doing it, I'm watching Clone Wars, catching up on all the stuff that I'm missing. And so the big giant robot-y droid planes, when they're given an order, say by your command. Don't you think that's kind of lifted from another another series? Yeah. There's some in odd sort of pieces and bits and pieces in this thing, but yeah, I can see where you're saying before that Ahsoka is sort of the main character, right? So especially
as it goes on and Filoni starts to grow his influence. I mean, Ahsoka's his baby,
yeah,
and you really see it as the series progresses. How far in are you now? How many seasons?
I just saw this low and slow thing where they were showing where
they're working with the rebels.
The rebels on how to roll the things, and they're all yelling at, like, they get too excited and they start too fast and it bounces off.
Yeah, and that ties into the whole the Rogue One and the characters from there and everything. Yeah, so
does it? Okay.
Yeah, it's it's funny, especially
I'm halfway through season 5 is where I am actually.
Yeah, so you're really starting to get into the I found in the first particularly 4 seasons and bits of 5, but the first 4 seasons in particular, there's a lot more sort of standalone little stories and one-offs. By the time you get to 5, 6 and the final season, it really is like everything matters. There's no chuffa. There's no episodes that don't mean anything. Everything means something. So that's where I think for me it really picks up and becomes critical watching, where you're like, oh, okay, so this is this character. This character matters because of this. Oh, this circumstance actually really impacts down the line and stuff like that. And also, I think they knew that they were sort of heading towards the overlap with Revenge of the Sith too, where they kind of had to start turning things a little bit, and so you see in some of the characters just what their motivations are. Again, I still maintain, I don't love the prequel series, because I feel like where it fails is that the idea is that we see the fall of Anakin, but it doesn't feel as really tragic as it should. But once you've watched Clone Wars, it really does. Like the Anakin character in there is very likable and very charismatic and very, and his relationship with Ahsoka shows a whole different side of him than his relationship with Padme in the movies. I found it really much more impactful. So by the time you get to the end of it, and of course he turns and becomes Darth Vader, it's heartbreaking. It's really, really sad. Like, you genuinely feel it in a way that I never felt when I watched Revenge of the Sith. I mean, obviously beyond like, hey, I just slaughtered a bunch of children, but in the show, like I really came to find an affection for the Anakin character. So his relationship with Ahsoka, his relationship with the other characters, his relationship with Obi-Wan, that is so much better explored, so that when he finally caves and turns and becomes Darth Vader, it is just tragic.
Yeah, and it's funny, like so Darth Maul's back, and it's funny whenever, and I'm seeing the sort of Ventress has been kicked out, and now she's coming back to, she helps Obi-Wan in one episode, but Obi-Wan is a horrible fighter, or unless he's like trying to let himself be beat up, but
yeah.
Yeah, he's not the guy you imagine. That kind of like, you know, because and it's not Ewan McGregor, but it's sort of voiced like Ewan McGregor. But yeah, he gets his ass handed to him quite often. Right?
Yeah, I love Ventress is one of my favorite characters from that world. I find it really sad that she's not been brought to live action either. But
spoilers, yeah.
But I love Ventress, and I love more than Ventress herself. I love the dynamic between her and Obi-Wan throughout that series. Those two clearly want to do it. Like they're just. Yeah. They are basically like using their lightsabers as you know, a sexual innuendo. Like it's such a palpable thing between the two of them, and I love it. I am totally there for it.
Well, and then there's Ahsoka making eyes at the young the senator's son, who's one of the rebels, and it's funny because like this Vulcan Zoom call we had today, where she could sense, you know, how Saru was feeling. I find it weird that the Jedi can sense over holograms what other people in the room are feeling.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
Because he sort of says to Ahsoka, you know, he sort of says, you know, put your feelings aside. You have to put purpose before feeling. And she says, well, you don't know how hard it is. He goes, actually, I do.
Yeah.
I guess nobody knows that he's married to Padme at that point, right?
Yep. And there's, you know, even within that, like the relationship between Obi-Wan and Satine, right? That's something that gets really kind of explored in this as well, that, you know, they clearly have a past, and they, you know, over the course of the series, they delve in and out of it a little bit, but like those two clearly love each other, and that's complicated.
True. And well, that whole Mandalorian, like the whole lore about him having to wear his helmet all the time. I mean, like, but here we see people on Mandalore not wearing helmets at all.
Well,
right?
So we talked, we haven't really talked about it too much, but so as you continue watching the series, maybe we can talk about it a little more. Jaime, I don't know if you intend to sort of get into it, so I don't want to spoil anything, but there is this sort of rebel faction on Mandalore that they explore in the Clone Wars, and then they continue to explore into Rebels, called Death Watch, right? And so Death Watch are these group of rebels who are sort of, you know, this outlier band. They're on the moon, and they are... you know, they think that the Mandalorian people are going the wrong way, that they need to embrace violence. They need to embrace their heritage as a group to be feared and everything else. It's pretty clear when you watch The Mandalorian, if you understand that backstory from Clone Wars and Rebels, that the group, the sect that Din Djarin belongs to is clearly an offshoot of Death Watch.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because the Katie Sackhoff character, I don't know the name of the character, but
Bo-Katan.
I saw her in...
Yeah.
Sorry? Bo-Katan. And I saw the dark saber. Like, was this the first sort of time it shows up, or did I miss something earlier?
No, the dark saber first appears in Clone Wars, and then it continues its journey into...
No, because it's just like one of the leaders in the what do you call them, the Dark Knights? Or
Death Watch.
The Knights of Ni?
Death Watch.
Yeah, he pulls it out and he starts whipping around, and it's the same effect that you see, like, you know, that black with the white line.
There's only one. There's only one, and that is it. And so it continues its journey through the stories in Clone Wars. That you'll see it reappear again. Not to spoil anything, but it does come back around again, and then it continues its journey into Rebels, and then it continues its journey into Mandalorian and into Book of Boba Fett. So it's a very important MacGuffin through the whole story.
It's like Excalibur,
that's actually a perfect analogy. It really is. It's supposed to denote like leadership and control and power, and so Death Watch uses it as a symbol of that. But it gets sort of
the guy who's wielding it here in the episode I just watched, is that the relative to the guy that tries to beat Din Djarin for it?
Yes. Clan Vizsla is sort of this persistent thorn in the side of the people of Mandalore, as well as the Jedi, and as it continues. So it's pretty telling, again, that there is a member of Clan Vizsla in this group that Din Djarin belongs to. It's another tip that he's working. Essentially, he's following this rather extremist view of Mandalore based on Death Watch ideology. So again, I think in season 3 of Mandalorian, which we may not see till next year, I think we're probably going to start exploring a little more of the Mandalore lore, and then getting a little more of the Bo-Katan's perspective as a former member of Death Watch, and then what Death Watch really is, and he may find himself questioning what matters to him and what his beliefs have been, what he's been taught, and everything else. So again, It's a lot. I get it's a lot to have to go back and watch all of Clone Wars and all of Rebels. You know, I was talking to my son about this recently because he was like, oh, you know, we watched Book of Boba Fett, and he's like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? I said, you know, you don't have to watch the whole thing, but there's probably a good 20, 25 episodes of Clone Wars and easily probably another dozen to 20 episodes that you need to watch of Rebels, because they really are touching on this stuff in a lot of big ways. And this is where the future of the Disney Plus live action Star Wars shows are going.
What's interesting, though, is so I'm watching them in order right now, but I did take, or a couple of months ago, I did find that Disney does have sets where you can find, you know, if you can follow the Ventress thread, or you can follow the Ahsoka thread, and it's sort of, here are the 10 essential Ahsoka episodes, and you know, kind of thing, to sort of give you the milestones of their development towards where they are going. So if you don't want to watch all of Clone Wars, you can find these on Disney Plus.
Yeah. But I mean, in the same way we were just talking about that related to the Marvel stuff, where now again the Disney Plus stuff is kind of driving towards Doctor Strange, and you kind of have to watch WandaVision, and kind of have to watch Loki and What If. You know, you don't have to watch the backstory.
But they're only like 6 episodes. It's not like they're super long, right?
No, that's true. And again, the Clone Wars and the Rebels are 22 minutes apiece. They were made for television. They're not a huge commitment, but again, you probably have a good 8 hours worth of stuff that you might want to consider watching, because you're going to get a little bit behind the curve if you're hardcore into it. If you're just a casual, you'll be fine. They'll explain everything as they go, but I'll say beyond that, they're really good. Like as television episodes, when Filoni really exercises his control over those 2 series, it's good. It's really good. Like there's some great episodes, especially towards the later stuff on Clone Wars and into Rebels. There's some really, really good episodes of television. I don't know if either of you guys have gotten into Rebels at all, but the season 3 finale is like a 2-parter. And there's a Star Wars lightsaber fight scene in that is as good as anything that's ever been committed to anything on Star Wars. It is fantastic. And, you know, again, the lion's share of people would be like, I'm not watching cartoons. Like I'll watch the live action stuff. I'll watch the movies, but I'm not watching the cartoons. But it matters. One last thing before we get to the watch list. Well, I think it's interesting to just sort of 2 things. One is I found it interesting that when they talked about Maul, the title changes to red instead of yellow. Yeah, like it's kind of like a mirror universe. Yeah, thing. But and that's how you know it's going to be a Sith-centered, you know, story. Yeah. But where does the the original animated Clone Wars? I think they were like 15 minutes each. Where do they fit into things? They've been decanonized. The Tartanovsky stuff, Gennady Tartanovsky.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've relegated that to being the legacy stuff, the sort of alternate reality. It's
up there with the droids and the Ewoks, kind
of thing, right? Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's not considered canon anymore.
Ewoks.
Yep.
All right, let's move to our watch list.
Yeah, so I'll kick us off. We got a chance this weekend. My wife and I sat down and watched the entire run of The Woman in the House Across from the Girl in the Window on Netflix. This is the new Kristen Bell thriller/comedy series. Have either of you had a chance to watch this?
I watched the first episode, or part of the first episode. Yeah.
How many of you watched this?
No, I haven't seen that.
So it's a very unusual series. It is in that weird zone that some of these shows find themselves, where it's not funny enough to be a dark comedy. It's not enough of a thriller or a mystery to be a great mystery. It's kind of got its tongue in its cheek, but then there are parts that seem sort of hyper earnest. It's really hard to put your finger on. The loose premise is that this woman who has experienced a tragedy in her life is living alone. She spends all her time drinking wine and looking out the window. One day when she's looking out the window, she sees what she thinks is a crime in the house across the street and becomes obsessed with it. It's a little Hitchcocky and a little derivative. But and of course, Kristen Bell, famously of Veronica Mars and Good Place, plays the lead character. And Yeah, and then it's basically about her trying to figure out was she seeing things? Is it her mental health? Is the neighbor a killer? Is somebody else in the neighborhood? What's really happening? Did the crime even really happen? I don't know what's going on. It's a little bit confusing at times, but it's saved by the fact that Kristen Bell is incredibly charming. I've yet to see her do anything bad, really, frankly. And she's very, very likable in spite of the fact that her character is clearly very, very badly damaged and flawed. But it's just such a strange story. Like, you find yourself sort of working your way through it, and you're trying to sort of decide whether you care about the mystery. Are you supposed to care about the mystery? Are you supposed to be laughing along at the sort of absurdity of some of it? Or are you supposed to be like earnestly invested that there's like trouble a-brewing? It's a bit of a confusing series. And all that to say, I don't even know how to qualify it, if I would recommend it or not, because it is a bit of a head scratch. It's not earnest enough to be a good thriller. It's not funny enough to be a good comedy. And yet we watched all of it, and I still find myself thinking about it and talking about it. So perhaps it's better than I'm giving it credit for, but it's an unusual experience. It's pretty tight. It's 8 episodes at like 24 minutes a piece, so you can knock it out. And I mean, if you're committed, you can knock it out in an afternoon. We killed it over 2 days last weekend. But it's definitely an unusual, atypical watch. There are parts that are genuinely quite funny. There are parts that are genuinely quite like creepy, unsettling. But it's I can't decide if I would recommend people watch it or not. I would say if you like Kristen Bell, watch it, because she's great, and the supporting cast around her are actually pretty good. Beyond that, I just don't know. I don't know how you should feel about it at all.
It does seem interesting, and I thought it was sort of like one of those the movies that Anna Faris used to be in, that were sort of the knockoff.
But those ones were sort of more deliberately absurdist, right? Like they were meant to sort of take the piss out of things a little bit, whereas this feels very much more. It's more subtle. It's far more subtle, and yet there are some parts where you're like, well, clearly that's ridiculous. Like you find yourself, and they're having a very earnest conversation, but you're like, but clearly this is ridiculous. Like, but they're playing it like totally dead on. Yeah, it's odd. But again, if you're a Kristen Bell fan, she's fantastic. She's as likable as ever. And she really carries it and takes it somewhere, even if you're a little bit, find yourself at the end of it going, what? And they do leave the window open for a potential continuation of this if they felt they wanted to. So it would be interesting to see where they could go with it.
Cool. All right. What do you got for us, Jaime?
I have something on Netflix starring Canada's own Will Arnett called Murderville. It's kind of strange. So Will Arnett plays a detective named Terry Seattle, and it's a weird mix of improv comedy and scripted comedy. So the basic premise is that Will Arnett's character Terry Seattle is a detective who lost his partner many years ago and still sort of pines for that partner. So each episode introduces a new celebrity guest detective, trainee detective. So you've got, in order, it is Conan O'Brien, Marshawn Lynch, Kumail Nanjiani, Annie Murphy, Sharon Stone, and Ken Jeong. And it's kind of interesting seeing how you kind of get to play along. So every episode has a murder with 3 potential suspects. They go and talk to the suspects. They sort of make the celebrities do sort of weird, bizarre things as part of the case. And at the end, they get to say like who they thought the killer was, and then get told yes or no, and sort of find out, what were the clues that led to the actual sort of crime being figured out. So it's pretty neat. It has a surprising arc to it. There is a seasonal arc to the story, which is kind of surprising given the way it starts out.
Spoilers.
I mean, it's not a spoiler to say there's an arc. Like after like 2 episodes, you'd be like, oh, okay, this carries on for the previous one. They're not just episodic. It actually does have a light story arc through it.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm watching a few other things too. I watched a really interesting documentary on Triumph, the rock band from the the 80s was on Crave. I just stumbled across a very strange little movie. But I watched the first episode of Only Murders in the Building, which is the Steve Martin, Martin Short, and
Selena Gomez. Yeah,
Selena Gomez. She's actually really good in this. These three people live in this building in New York, sort of like the Dakota kind of deal. And there's a fire alarm in the first episode, and they all have to vacate the building, and they meet in the elevator, and they're all like being very distant from each other as they tend to be in New York. I guess it's the sort of characters that they talk about. They meet in this elevator, and the fourth person gets in, and they have to vacate the building, and they're all sort of very distant from each other, but they end up all in a one restaurant together. And Steve Martin character doesn't really like the Martin Short character. He finds him obnoxious and whatever, but they both find out that they listen to murder mystery podcasts, right? Which is the tie into our show, right? And she also listens to it. And so the three of them get together, and then they're like, and what did the dog have in its mouth? Kind of like is the introduction once they realize that they're all tuning into the same podcast, right? And so they decide to start their own podcast, which is where the title of the thing, because of course, it wasn't a fire alarm. Somebody was killed in the building, and the person who was killed in the building, dun dun dun, was the fourth person who got in the elevator with them. So now their mission in life is to every week have a murderer and talk about it on their own little podcast. And so that's the setup of the first episode. And of course, Martin Short and Steve Martin are pretty funny together. And of course, like I said, as a third wheel, Selena Gomez is actually surprisingly really good. And she's sort of like, these two guys are obviously in their 70s, and she's, in her 20s. And so there's sort of that sort of side of things too. Cool. Which is kind of cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of those, and we'll see how it goes. And
I saw that's actually, it's leaving Disney Plus in Canada at like the end of the month too, which, really? I was surprised by that.
When?
End of the month.
When? Oh, geez, I got a lot of work to watch.
I know. Because that was one that my wife had flagged as well. She was like, "Oh, I heard this is supposed to be really good," and we had sort of said, like, oh, when we have a spare weekend, we'll sit down and we'll start plugging through those ones. And then, she said she flipped by the other day, and it said like leaving at the end of the month, and she was like, "Damn it."
Yeah, and I am enjoying like I mentioned last week, I'm watching A Suspicion and the After Party. Yeah, those are both still extremely enjoyable, and of course I have to wait till Fridays for those to come out. So yeah, that's all good.
Cool beans.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you. Where would they find you?
Always on Instagram and Twitter as @JPK News.
All right. And Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you on Instagram,
I'm on Twitter as @Dev with the hair.
Almost got you. Once again, my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, on all of the things. Instagram,
Twitter,
whatever, all the Twitter, not Facebook though. I didn't get that one on Facebook.
What about LinkedIn? Where do they find you on LinkedIn?
No, LinkedIn. I'm not. I'm IT Guy Canada on LinkedIn. Surprisingly, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. I joined Twitter early enough that I could have chosen something less boring than my name, but I didn't think about it any at the time. Alrighty, so I guess that's it for another week, and we'll see you guys in the future. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Or bye. Sorry, bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
The other thing, I don't know if you ever listen to Smart List, but they always have one of the hosts will go on a I don't know if the premise of the show is that I think you've talked about it last week, where they have one person, one of the hosts will bring somebody in, and they don't tell the other two on the show who the guest is, and they sort of do a sort of faux introduction, and then they sort of kind of get them to guess who the guest is, and then it's like, it's Dave Grohl, or it's Conan O'Brien, or it's, whatever. But at the end of it, one of them always sort of goes on this sort of tired, like sort of ramble like I'm doing now, where they kind of tell a little bit of a story, and it always ends up with bye. Anyway, so there you go. That's the time. If people are wondering why I keep saying bye. And that's it. It's over. Music's playing.
You're still here. Go home.
Yeah, you're still here. Go home. Go home. Actually, speaking of which, I got to go shovel snow.
Yeah,
so.
Sames.
Alrighty. Off to shoveling.
Whee!
Bye. Go home.
That's it? We're done?
We're done.
Yeah.
Bye.
Just like that. Okay, bye.
All right. See you next week, guys.
An avid cyclist dreams of turning his passion into a business. He consults his banker to help find the best path. Now bike wheels are being built, and all it took was a little push to get rolling. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint.